The Joe Rogan Experience.
We've talked about you, I don't know how many times. Many times.
I've heard that from my son. He says you mention my name glowingly. Is the word
Yeah,
he used.
well, hey, man, you were a giant inspiration to me when I was coming up, when I was a kid.
Good to hear.
Well, I've talked about this so many times, but that era of Boston comedy, when I started in '88, and you guys had already been through the ding ho and all that's it been gone, and it was the heyday of comedy. It was an amazing time, and I was very fortunate to be able to see guys like you and Sweeney and and all those guys, and Mike Donovan and Kevin Knox, and I mean you go down the list over and over and over again. Lenny Clark, and just an amazing time for stand up back then.
Yeah, that was certainly the heyday. I came in, I started it around '79, and it'd been going on for 1 or 2 years, but going on meaning not much going on, and then it built and built and built, and then to the point that that explosion, as you said, wow. And I always like to think people talk about a Boston style. There wasn't a Boston style, other than being very aggressive, maybe.
Yeah.
But everybody had different ways of doing it because we didn't know. It wasn't like an LA style or New York style. There was just all different approaches coming out to the same end.
Yeah, you started in '79, so that was really like the beginning of comedy clubs, right?
Yeah, well, they weren't even comedy clubs. You mentioned the Ding Ho. Ding Ho used to be like a saloon, and the guys that were sitting at the bar when we first went in there, they refused to leave. So they stayed at the bar, and all they would do is when we put somebody up on the stand, they'd turn around and say, "Hey, shut the fuck up! We're trying to drink here." And we couldn't get rid of them. So finally, we willed it out because they get so tired of hearing the microphone. But that was just a joint. That's all you can say. And became a Chinese restaurant. Yeah.
So it wasn't a Chinese restaurant at first?
It was just a saloon, I think. And then Shun Lee, this guy came in. It was approached to put comedy in there. And Barry Crimmins was one of the guys originally. And Lenny, myself, Sweeney, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
DJ Hazard, people like that. Jimmy Tingle. And
yeah.
There was a bunch of us that came in at that time. And once again, no particular one style. Other than the fact that we kind of created that the headliner would be the host.
Yeah, that was a weird Boston style. Like when you have the Don Gavin show,
yes.
You would go out there and host,
yes.
and you do a few minutes in between each comic.
Right.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it was weird. Because I wanted to be in charge, and if Joe Rogan went on and you're supposed to do 15 and you do great. Now if Bill Johnson comes on and he blows, I'm going to go up and take the mic after about 6 minutes. Yeah, that was Bill Johnson. Yeah, just and then go on to the next guy.
Yeah,
and then at the end, that headliner would close the show.
Yeah,
so you had that much control over it. But when you started doing more and more shows, like I started Nick's in Boston, initially. It was a joke. It was supposed to be a tax write-off, and they tried to sabotage it. That used to be a steak joint.
Really?
Yeah, Nick's steak joint. And so when we did it, one week the stage was collapsed. Next week there'd be no sound. Next week no lighting. The doors would be locked. But then eventually more and more people coming in. Then they got upset because we were getting in the way of the people going to the steak pot. And then they said, well, maybe we can make money on this. We'll go upstairs. There was an upstairs there. And that was used only on one night of the week for Greek belly dances, where they were paid $200. The Nick's was $200. In fact, these Greek belly dancers, the production people, they brought in their own liquor. So they only made $200 for the whole weekend. So once we went up there to one show, then the show, and eventually, and around the time when you came in, we were doing 5 shows on my night on Saturday night. 5 shows in the same place, upstairs and downstairs.
Yeah, I remember that. That was before I was getting paid, so I was really an amateur, but I remember watching, there was a show in the upstairs room,
right.
And then there was a smaller downstairs room, and then there was another time where they did it in the disco, right? They had, which is it is a disco now, I think, right?
If it is, it's a very sad disco.
Yeah. Well, it was sad then, too.
Yes.
But it was strange that everyone was cycling from room to room.
Right, and you go from upstairs to downstairs. And again, the first week we tried that with the 5 shows, you were trying to host. It was impossible to go both places. I mean, the guy on the side of the stage would go, you're supposed to be on downstairs. And go, well, I just started up here. And it was so confusing that you get on stage and you say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Have I already said that? And then you weren't sure. It got to the point, and also with a few drinks involved by the 5th show, there was some repetition sometimes.